So I wanted to make sure that stopped. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to restart this paragraph over real quick. So it was thus Marxism alone that could provide the ideological, political, and organizational perspective for the First International.
Your screen's not sharing, though. It's frozen.
Oh, the screen stopped sharing. That's not good. Why is this happening to me?
Yep.
Okay. So implementation of this perspective meant constant struggle against an opportunist trends.
It's only showing my profile picture. It's not showing what you're reading.
Why is this happening? Hang on. Is that better? Is it showing what's on the screen now?
No, it's not showing material.
That's not good. That's what's on my screen. Hang on. I don't understand why this is doing this now. It's like window or screen. It's showing it now?
Yep. Got it.
Okay. Okay. So implementation of this perspective meant constant struggle against the various anarchist and opportunist trends that arose within the movement. Among other things, the anarchists opposed a strong organization, whereas the opportunists opposed resolute struggle. Fighting both deviations, Marx and Engels worked to build the International into a mass organization of struggle, uniting the workers of both Europe and the United States. In this, they led largely succeeded campaigns at the same time the formation of independent proletarian parties in many industrialized countries in the world. By the time of the historic Paris Commune in 1871, Marxism had advanced very far from its position at the time of the 1848 revolution. Marxism no longer remained merely one of the trends of socialism. The earlier trends of utopian socialism had been swept away by history, and it was Marxism alone that retained full practical significance. Marxism also was no longer restricted to small groups, but had become a mass phenomenon. Its influence extended to the proletarian movement in various industrialized countries. It provided ideological leadership to independent proletarian parties. It headed a massive proletarian movement, which had begun to challenge the bourgeoisie. Marxism had fused its links with the vast working class masses. So Chapter 10, Lessons of the Paris Commune. The Paris Commune was the first time in history when the proletariat seized power and attempted to set up its own rule. The Commune could not consolidate its rule and was crushed within a period of 72 days. However, its experience was of world historic significance. During its short existence, it provided a glimpse of the new society. Through both its positive examples as well as its mistakes, it provided immensely valuable lessons for the working class of the world. Marx, in his role as leader of the First International, summarized the lessons of this great experience for the international proletariat. Context of the Paris Commune framed by the Franco-German War of 1870 to 1871. It started in July 1870 with the reactionary French Emperor Napoleon III ordering an attack on Prussia, which, with other smaller provinces, became Germany in January 1871, because he mistakenly thought that the Prussians were in a weak position. His armies were rapidly defeated, and Napoleon III surrendered and was taken prisoner by the Prussians in September 1870. Napoleon III's surrender was followed by the setting up of a republic headed by a politician named Thiers. In March 1871, Thiers signed a peace treaty with the Germans. Paris, however, which had been surrounded by the Prussian army since September 1870, would not submit to Thiers. It was under the control of the Paris National Guard. It was composed mainly of workers. On March 18, 1871, Thiers sent his army to disarm the National Guard. There was a revolt in which 2 French army generals were shot dead, and the army was forced to retreat. Power had passed over into the hands of the National Guard, who, within a week, held elections and set up a council consisting of 92 members. The council, which had a large number of workers, became the organ of government. It introduced numerous progressive measures for the reorganization of social life and the administration of the city, and thus had the full support of the whole working class people. The Paris Commune was, however, a government under attack. Fearing the strength of the working class, the German and French oppressors immediately joined the Commune. Germany even directly helped the Thiers government by releasing a section of the French army, who had surrendered and taken prisoner in 1870. Workers fought bravely, but they were no match for the well-equipped professional army. May 20th, 1871. Even after the takeover over 30,000 communards were butchered in cold blood. Over 45,000, of whom many were executed and others sent to prison or into exile. It's as if the bourgeoisie was determined to teach an unforgettable lesson to the work they ever even dream of seizing power again. The First International was at the peak of popular appeal at the time of the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune. It had a broad base among the workers and regularly provided guidance on political questions. When the Franco-Prussian War broke out, Marx immediately published a document in the name of the General Council of the First International. This document is one of the first applications of the Marxist tactical principles regarding war. He called for international solidarity of the workers while putting the blame for the war on the rulers of both France and Prussia. Due to the propaganda of the International, a strong spirit of internationalism existed among French and German workers. In fact, Bebel and Wilhelm Liebknecht, 2 members of parliament and leaders of the German Proletarian Party, who were Marxists of the International, were jailed by the Prussian government for voting in parliament against war credits. In the initial period of the war, Marx characterized it as a defensive war on the part of Germany because of the reactionary nature of the aggressive Napoleon III regime. He, however, predicted the fall of this reactionary ruler. When this took place, Marx immediately published a document that called on the German workers to oppose what had now become a German war of conquest. He called for peace with France in recognition of the newly formed republic. He characterized the republic as being led by the finance aristocracy and being bourgeoisie. However, he felt it would be premature to attempt to overthrow the republic and form a workers' government. In fact, Marx firmly opposed any attempt at insurrection in Paris. This was because the German enemy had already surrounded Paris, and there was very little chance of any insurrection surviving under such circumstances. Despite Marx's advice, activists of various anarchist and conspiratorial trends who had some following in Paris made various attempts organizing an uprising. When the insurrection actually took place, Marx, in spite of all his earlier opposition, declared full and militant support for the Commune. He immediately recognized its historic significance and sent hundreds of letters throughout the world trying to build support. Through messengers, he kept in contact with the communards, sending advice to the internationalists in the Commune. Consulting Engels, who was an expert in military matters. He also sent advice regarding the military defense of the Commune. The leadership of the Commune was of the members of other groups and trends. The Marxists within the Commune made all attempts to strengthen its activities and defense. After the defeat of the Commune, the International, which was the principal organization which arranged for the shelter and helped to gain jobs for the communards who had to flee the brutal repression of the French bourgeoisie. Marx, who immediately hailed the Commune as an event of immense historic significance, made an in-depth analysis trying to draw lessons from its experience. This work, Civil War in France, was written during the Commune, but could only be published 2 days after its fall. It served to propagate its achievements and build the correct perspective towards the Commune among revolutionaries and workers throughout the world. Firstly, Marx highlighted the major positive and revolutionary measures taken by the Commune, which he presented as the incubation of the new society. He pointed out the major political decision as the separation of the church and state. The separation of the church and the state. Abolition of subsidies to the church, replacement of the standing army by the people's militia, election and control of all judges and magistrates, upper salary limit for all government officials, and making them strictly responsible to the electorate, etc. The major socio-economic measures. The major socio-economic measures were free and general education, abolition of night work in bakeries, cancellation of employers and workshops, closing of pawn shops, seizure of closed workshops, which would be run by workers' cooperatives, relief to the unemployed, and rationed houses and assistance to debtors. All the above measures showed that although there was no clear direction to the Commune, all its decisions had clear stamp of the actions of the proletariat. Despite being faced constantly by the desperate question of its very survival, the Commune, through its actions, provided the first glimpse of what type of society the coming proletarian revolution would bring. It provided the first experience of the proletariat state power, what Marx and Engels referred to as the first dictatorship of the proletariat. The Commune, by its weaknesses, also provided the valuable lesson for the future struggles of the proletariat. These were pointed out by Marx. A serious weakness of the Commune was the lack of clear and centralized leadership of a single proletarian party. From this, Marx concluded that for the success of the revolution, it was absolutely necessary to have the leadership of a strong, clear-sighted, and disciplined proletarian party. The other point, which Marx repeatedly stressed, was the need to smash the existing state machinery. In order to build a new worker state, it was not possible to rely upon the existing state machinery of the bourgeoisie, with its state officials who were totally committed to preserving the old social order. In fact, in order to build the worker state, it was first necessary to smash the existing state apparatus and get rid of all high-level officials associated with it. In the period of reaction and repression following the Commune, there was considerable confusion among the revolutionary forces as to how to assess the experiences and draw the correct conclusions. The anarchists who had participated in large numbers in the Commune were particularly at a loss. Marx's analysis gave a clear-cut position, dispelling all types of confusion. Marx also helped propagate the correct understanding regarding the Commune throughout the world. Following the Commune, the bourgeoisie portrayed Marx as the real leader of the Commune, and he was therefore even interviewed by the world press. Through interviews, present the correct stand. Marxism again was providing the correct answers. Chapter 11 is the spread of Marxism and the rise of opportunism. So the period after the Paris Commune was one of reactionary offensive by the bourgeoisie on the working class movement. This had its impact on the First International. The French section was the worst hit, with most of its members becoming refugees in other countries, with severe factional fights among them. The German labor movement also faced a setback with the long arrest of the main Marxist leaders, Bebel and Liebknecht, who would oppose the war and the annexation of parts of France. This meant that the two most important sections of the International were handicapped. Simultaneously, there was a split in the English section, with some of the leaders leaving the International in opposition to the militant stand in support of the Commune taken by Marx. This, coupled with the manipulations by the anarchists, weakened the International. Marx and Engels decided to transfer the headquarters of the International from London to New York. This decision was taken in the 1872 Congress of the International. The weakened International, however, could not revive and was finally dissolved in 1876. The dissolution of the First International, however, did not stop the onward march of Marxism and the setting up of new proletarian parties. The period after the Paris Commune saw a long, almost 35-year gap of peace without any major wars between the big capitalist countries on the European continent. During this period, the labor movement in most industrialized countries expanded rapidly. Socialist parties, which had a basically proletarian composition, set up large and elaborate structures. Under their leadership, grew trade unions, daily newspapers, work cooperatives, etc. Working often under legal conditions, they participated quite successfully in the bourgeois parliaments. It was many of these parties who got together to set up the Second International in 1889. This formation of the Second International gave further encouragement to the growth of new proletarian socialist parties in various parts of the world. Until the end of their lives, Marx and Engels continued to play the role of ideological leaders and practical organizers of this growing working class movement. They provided the constant theoretical inputs to strengthen the foundations of the growing movement. Marx concentrated on further study of political economy and more in-depth study of capitalism. The first volume of Capital came out in 1867. After that, Marx continued to struggle against severe ill health to try to complete the latter volumes of his work. However, it remained unfinished right up to his death on March 14, 1883. Engels, however, completed the monumental task of collecting together Marx's notes, editing them, and finally publishing the second and third volumes of Capital. Engels, in fact, also did substantial theoretical work after becoming a full-timer in 1869. Along with Marx and alone, he published various works on philosophy, socialist theory, evolution, origin of social and political institutions, etc. After the death of Marx, he played a central role in guiding the building movement, in guiding and building the movement in various countries. Through regular correspondence, he performed the role of a center, which was otherwise non-existent throughout the world, or throughout this period. This he did till his death on August 5th, 1895. A large part of Marx and Engels' works was fighting the trends of opportunism that started gaining strength with the growth of the movement. One important trend was Lassalleism, which arose first during the First International but continued also in later years. Its originator, Ferdinand Lassalle, was the founder of the first working-class socialist party set up in 1863 in Germany. The main opportunist aspects of Lassalleism were discouraging workers' struggles for higher wages and making appeals to the state for aid to set up workers' cooperatives, which Lassalle saw as the main means of reforming society and gradually bringing about socialism. In order to fight the wrong understandings on wage struggles, Marx wrote the book Wage, Prices, and Profits, and presented it in the General Council of the First International in 1865. The fight against Lassalleism continued in 1875 when Marx wrote the Critique of the Gotha Program. The Gotha Program was the program drafted at the time of the unification of the Lassallist and Marxist proletarian parties of Germany into one party. At that time, Marxists were so keen on unity that they made compromises with the opportunist politics of Lassalleism. Marx, in his critique, made a thorough criticism of the points that had opportunist politics. However, the critique was only given to a handful of the leading Marxist members of the German party. It was not circulated, and very few of his suggestions were brought into practice. However, in 1891, when a new party program was being drafted, Engels insisted on publishing the critique. Despite the protest of some of the leading members of the party, this time the Lasallist aspects did not appear in the new program. Other opportunist trends that appeared were similarly resolutely opposed by Marx and Engels as long as they were alive. After Engels' death, however, one of the biggest attacks on Marxism appeared from within the proletarian movement itself. Since direct opposition to Marxism was very difficult, this attack came in the form of an attempt to revise Marxism. This trend, which later came to be called revisionism, was initiated first by Bernstein, one of the leading members of the German Party and also of the Second International. He presented his views in 1898 to 99 within the German Party. Bernstein proposed that because of changed conditions, it was necessary to change all the basic formulations made by Marx. He proposed that it was not necessary to have violent revolution to bring about socialism, and that reform of capitalist institutions would gradually bring out socialism. As opportunism had been growing in the working class movement, Bernstein's revisionism soon found supporters in various parties. However, at the same time, many genuine revolutionaries rallied around in the support of Marxism. The debate was taken up before the Congress of the Second International held at night before. The Congress strongly condemned revisionism by a vote of 25 to 5 with 12 abstentions. There was also another compromise resolution which did not so strongly condemn revisionism that did pass because of a tie vote of 21 to 21. Thus, in both the resolutions, there was a very big section that supported or did not want to take a strong stand against revisionism. Though the Congress finally condemned revisionism, it was quite clear in 1904 that opportunism and revisionism had built a substantial base for itself at the highest levels of the international working class movement. The opposition to opportunism in many countries, however, was also strong. A particularly strong center was in Russia, where the Bolsheviks, under the leadership of Lenin, had already waged numerous struggles against varieties of opportunism. Rob, you said you stopped at 12, right?
Yeah, that's where we stopped.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop talking.
Before I started talking about Lenin.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and stop there. That way we're basically on the same place. Let's see here. How do I... Bam. Okay. No, there went my camera, I think. Ridiculous. But I was going to say, I think it's interesting. I didn't know that Karl Liebknecht... I assume that Liebknecht has to be related to Karl Liebknecht, considering they're both part of the same German thing. Karl Liebknecht was part of the Spartacus movement, and also the Deutsche Communist Party, which was back in like 1917. Oh, of course, my video is not working. There we go. Does anyone have any questions about what we went over today? Or any observations?
You know, I always got some, but if anybody else got some.
Oh. I will say it's kind of funny when you hear people talk about the French Revolution a lot of times because they got labeled as anarchists. If I recall correctly, it was because the king at the time was trying to discredit them, and it was like poke fun at them, even though they were obviously they weren't anarchists. And at the time, anarchist was kind of used as just a catch-all for just anyone that was anti-capitalist. Kind of like when the Biden administration had that paper that they basically called back, that just said it, labeled everyone as anarchist or anti-capitalist.
Yeah, something that to consider with everything that just went over. A lot of history was boiling out of the German area, and how if we look back, I think something too. Like let me make a different comment because this is something else. Something that I think we have to realize too is that the workers nowhere in history, or modern history, so to speak, ever ran their society in that way, in Europe, specifically. I'm speaking about Europe. So it's like when before the Paris Commune, they've only known either capitalists or some type of feudal or monarchy to run the show. There's never been a point in which the people were running the show until that moment. So that was like a brand new idea to them. That was, it wasn't the idea. It wasn't a brand new idea. It was more it was experience now, and it was like, oh, this is the proof in the pudding that it can be done, and which is obviously the foundation to Marxism, and kind of steered more people in the direction of Marx and Engels at that time, as they pointed out. So this is really important. But what I was saying about with Germany, I know this is a different subject, but small mustache guy, and I'm bringing up. I'm just gonna say that because I think we're streaming. I'm pretty sure we're streaming. So, they seen how popular socialism was in Germany, and how much people supported it in Germany, that they had no choice but to co-opt that terminology, because a lot of people think that those German bad guys were socialists when they weren't. They actually just stole the name, because there's no way in hell in Germany at that time could you have a political movement without being a socialist. That's how popular socialism was. So I just wanted to point that out. You're muted.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Also, just since you brought up, there's it's a member of, or it's a edition, it's a magazine that was printed at the time in Germany, where a small mustache guy explained that their socialism wasn't Marxism, because Marxism was the collectivization. Just in case anyone ever hears that argument once, wants a way to combat it super easily, like through his own words. He said that they're different, because their socialism was basically not socialism, was what he described. But he did use his own words, like on the Sunday morning something in August of 1944, something like that. You normally find it online. But yeah, no, they had to do all sorts of weird stuff back then. Plus, that's their definition of revisionism is obviously slightly off from what we use today, because theirs is just the against strong the revolution. That's what it was. I was trying to find the right words. Theirs was against that, and nowadays revisionism is just anything that just negates or refutes anything that we know to be a known truth. So they could be pro-violent revolution, I guess, and then still end up revisionist because words change over time.
Yeah, I think it's also good to point out that what comes of Bernstein. I know we're going to get next. We're going to speak about a lot of Lenin. I read this. So I read this book a long time ago. So I'm trying to remember if Rosa Luxemburg was brought up. I'm pretty sure she is. And this is going to be a pivotal point in we're understanding where, like, democratic socialism.
Which, of course, is just a means to try and delegitimize the movement. But that's also a good thing to point out that sometimes the alliance between groups is necessary as far as communists go, because Lenin and her sided together on the biggest issues and therefore had each other's support, even though they disagreed on things. But I'm sure had the DKP and take care of the way it was, probably would have come down to something, and I'm sure there would have been division later. But it was important. It was they stood together, so that's definitely important, especially right now with everything.
have anything else unless anybody else has any comments or questions.
Yeah, all right, well, that works. Heard, Matthew? All right, well, then I will see you guys next Thursday. I assume, I don't know what page we're on, but 76 out of 256. Okay, so we still have a while to go here. Trying to make sure I keep my classes in order.
We got next week off.
Next week we're off?
Yeah, next week we're taking a break. I'm gonna probably have to change the time for mine on Sunday. So we'll figure out, we'll congregate about it.
Okay, sweet. All right, well, then I'll talk to you guys next week. Enjoy your weekend.
All power, red salute.
All power.
Recording stopped. Recording has stopped.
Reflections. We don't make mistakes.